Broadcasting from the Business RadioX studios in Atlanta, it's time for IT Help Atlanta. Brought to you by Team Logic IT, your technology advisor. Now, here's your host, Rick Higgins.
Well, welcome and good morning, everyone, to the IT Help Atlanta radio show, the show that profiles small businesses and business people and highlights how those companies use technology to succeed. IT Help Atlanta is brought to you by Team Logic IT, your managed services advisor, specializing in cybersecurity and cloud solutions. Team Logic IT leverages cutting-edge technology to solve all types of business problems. We make technology work for business. Go to ithelpatlanta.com for audio archives of this radio show and to learn more about our sponsor, Team Logic IT. I'm your host, Rick Higgins, and today's special guests are Jason Sleeman, Vice President of Craft Beverage Lending of United Community Bank, and Roy Hickman, owner and operator of Accent Graphics. Good morning, gentlemen, and welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Glad to have both of you. We're going to jump right into the interview process. We're going to go one at a time. We're going to start with Jason. Jason, good morning. Tell the audience who you are and what do you do?
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Jason Sleeman. I lead the National Craft Beverage Lending efforts for United Community Bank. So what that means is we provide financing to breweries, wineries, distilleries. We're really focused right now on expansion opportunities, and we're just trying to help them finance their growth and bring their brands to bigger and better things.
Is that just in Atlanta only, or are you nationwide? How do you divvy up the country?
So that it's me across the whole country. So a lot of it is leveraging partners. So leveraging the manufacturers of the equipment, leveraging the attorneys in each state, the CPAs that have a specialty in that industry. So a lot of it is networking with the people who know the end user, just because of the fact that I can't cover all 50 states. So I have to know the right people that are connected with the people who actually need to borrow the money.
Very interesting. And do you find that, at least before COVID, were you traveling out to these types of deals?
Yeah, so there was a decent bit of travel, and COVID brought that to a pretty fast screeching halt. Yeah. I am hoping that in March there's a big conference called CBC, which is Craft Beverage Conference. It's out in California this year, so I'm hoping that travel starts to kind of pick back up, and that will actually happen with in-person attendance.
So just in general, and for the sake of the audience, here we are. It's the end of October of 2020. We're 8 or 9 months deep into the COVID pandemic situation. Some states have opened up. In Georgia, we've opened up almost 100%, and other states are different. But for you, Jason, besides the travel issue that we just talked about, how has COVID impacted your industry and your particular niche?
I think you hit the hammer on the nail. And you talked about Georgia and the fact that Georgia is wide open. It's amazing when you start looking at some of the financials for these guys here locally in Georgia. Some of them are having their best year ever. So some of these guys are really really need the opportunity because their sales are through the roof. When you make that comparative to California or Oregon or some of those more West Coast opportunities, they've got a lot more density, and they're very reliant on people coming in and drinking beer in their tap rooms. And so you're starting to see a decent bit of failures out there. And, as states open and close and open and close, California has a requirement that you have to make a reservation to go into a brewery. And if no one makes a reservation, then you can't open your doors for the day. And so it's really becoming regionalized, where some breweries are flourishing. The Southeast, a lot more of the breweries are having good, solid kind of finishing of the years, where, you've got stuff in the Northeast or out on the West Coast where they're struggling a little bit just because of the limitations and the laws they're having to live within.
Why is it important for a a craft brewery owner or an investor to work with a banker that specializes in this particular niche?
So all too often, a great commentary. I was on there's a Facebook group, and this person basically said, well, the SBA doesn't like craft beverage right now.
Huh.
And so it was a great wide open conversation that I could go and say, you got to think about what the SBA does. The SBA is really focused on providing a backstop when loans go bad, right? They give the banks an incentive to make the loans that are a little bit more risky. What you've got to find is you've actually got to find a bank that likes the industry. And so all too often, someone will just go into a mega bank, or they'll go into their local credit union or bank, and they'll say, I'm starting or expanding a brewery. Well, if you've only seen one of those, it looks like a pretty scary thing, and you don't understand terminology like barrels and, the three-tiered system is in distribution. And because they don't understand that, you start looking at numbers and they say, well, you're not as healthy as you would like to be. Well, if you've seen 100 of them, you can say, well, look at this. You're right at the same point as where you should be. And here's what we expect your next 12 months to look like. And we can lend off of understanding historical patterns of seeing these multiple times.
Great answer. So you lead me right into my next question. And that is, well, let's just pretend for the sake of this question that we're not dealing with the extra variable of COVID. But talk to me about stumbling blocks for brewery owners and how, what would they normally or typically see, and how do you help them with that?
So the number one stumbling block is usually raising their fair share of capital, right? So going out and raising equity. I'll give you an example. I have a guy right now that brews good beer, and he is short personally. He can't personally make the needed equity to make the deal happen. So I told him, I said, hey, look, you should go out and find a partner investor. And this becomes such an interesting conversation because he went out and he found someone that had super net worth. Like he would be a certified rich guy for sure. And I came back to him and I said, hey, I've got bad news for you. You can't qualify for the loan now because your partner's too rich. And he said, what do you want me to do now? Right. And so it's such an interesting place for these brewers to find a sweet spot in between. How do you find the people that have the appropriate leadership? Right. Because some people have never brewed beer and they want to start a brewery. So you've got to have in your leadership team someone who actually knows how to brew the beer and has the experience on large equipment. And then you also need people that have the financial wherewithal to understand the books and understand the revenue and understand the equity injection part of it. So really what you find, if you were going to kind of number them, the number one stumbling block is raising capital. People used to really want to invest in breweries. It used to be kind of the sexy thing. And so it wasn't hard to find investors. It's a little bit harder now to find investors. People with market conditions are pulling back from that. And then the other part of it is being able to balance appropriately the operational side. So understanding brewing, and the financial side, understanding the business acumen. And that becomes a stumbling block. So you'll show up and you'll ask someone for a P&L, a projected P&L or projections, and you can see the dazed and confused look. And you say, okay, great, let me start advising you those. So the biggest stumbling block is just kind of having your act together, having the appropriate partners on your team, and understanding what the financial requirements are going to be for you as an individual to pair with a bank loan.
I got to circle back on part of your answer to have you unpack a little bit, but I've always been, I don't know, call it cynical or whatever about banking in general. That banks, the old adage that banks only like to lend money to people that don't need it. So yeah. I know that's not true, but why would somebody's high net worth as a partner disqualify them from working with you guys?
Yeah, so there's two types of lending, and I would say that 85% of breweries fall into what's called government guaranteed lending. So you would know that as SBA lending or USDA lending, and then the SBA breaks down into the 7A or the 504. So the main purpose of the SBA is to encourage banks and to encourage lending institutions to make loans to small business, right? Their focus is on people who have small business. So in an example, I'm just going to give you an example. Let's say that you have someone who needs to borrow $500,000. That's a pretty small brewery loan just in kind of the scheme of things.
Right.
But if you have someone that has, $100,000 to their name, they can put some equity in, and then they have a little bit of reserves when it goes wrong. If that same person has $5 million, then they don't have that need for the government to help back and encourage the bank to do that loan. They can get more conventional lending, and we can do that lending. And so the discussion with this guy was, it really needs to be an SBA loan because it was a startup. There's no historical track record.
Gotcha.
And so when you have someone that has 4 or 5 or 6 times what you want to borrow, it disqualifies you from having that need to go with the SBA.
Well, that makes total sense. And I didn't want to make any assumptions. So that rolling it back to being SBA type related things, that makes it make sense. You mentioned at the very beginning that you're focused on expansions, not just startups, but also expansions of existing operations. So what are some typical financing structures for expansions?
So right now you're really seeing 2 different types of expansions. You're seeing second, third, fourth, fifth location expansions, or you're seeing expansions within their existing facility. So right now I'm working with a brewery that has hit capacity, which is, I think, what every brewery would want, is they physically cannot brew any more beer on the system and in the space that they're in. So they're going out and purchasing a second location and putting much larger equipment within that second location to provide 2 things. It provides them a second location for people to consume their beer. They'll have another tap room. And it also gives them this much larger capacity to go and start getting more of their beer into distribution. So they have demand that they can't meet. So more cans will go out, or kegs will go out, and they'll be able to do that. So that's one type. The other type is, hey, we are in a space that's large enough, but we started out maybe underfunded. And so we need to have a bigger brewing system. We need bigger tanks. We need, more maybe to add on, or we maybe need to purchase a building that we started leasing. And so those are 2 different type of expansions we see. Both of them require projections to kind of help us identify what potential revenue is going to be. But they do definitely look very different. One may just be giving, a couple $100,000 for new equipment, and another may be a $2 or $3 million building purchase and large expansion opportunity.
All right. This next question's a bit of a thinker, so hang on to your hat. But what's a question that you wish people would ask you, but that no one ever does?
So it is a thinker, and where I think that a lot of people have is they get caught up in the immediate need. So what they come to me with is I need money today to start this dream. And one of the questions I wish they would ask is, what do we need to do to make myself look good in 10 years, or help my brand be successful in 10 years? And a lot of times that may be something very different than what it's going to take for them just to kind of open the doors. Sometimes my recommendation may be, you should wait 6 months and go raise another $50,000 in capital. Or is that really going to be the space that you want to grow into? So I really wish people would ask me and have better discussions about forward thinking. They're thinking about this immediate need. I have a dream to start a brewery or a winery or distillery, and they really don't think of, what's my exit plan? What is it going to take for me to be successful? How do I maximize the return down the road for this?
And you and I talked a little bit earlier as a prep for the show. And did you say that you've been in commercial banking now for 18 years? Is that?
I've been yes, for 18 years.
So, and I know you had a couple other career paths prior to that, but and we don't need to talk about that, but I'm wanting to kind of drill in a little bit. When you were first thinking about making the switch to get into commercial banking, and you had in your mind all the benefits, the ups and the downs, and the pluses and minuses, after doing it for a while, and then really at the 18-year mark, what has been an interesting surprise for you that you just didn't expect when you were thinking about making that career change?
So the biggest part is my now ability to root on small business, right? It is that place where when, I haven't always been in craft beverage lending, but you would go and you'd finance a restaurant, and then I'd get to take my wife and we'd go eat at that restaurant, and the owners would come out. And, when I went on the very first brewery tour of one of the very first ones that I financed, the owner had a big crowd, and he said, none of this would have been made possible without Jason Sleeman right over there.
Oh, man.
He's the one who gave us the money to do this. And so I have been so surprised at the relationship and the ability to support small business with my dollars and my blood and sweat and effort. And so it allows me to basically take a huge city like Atlanta and make it feel like a small town because I know the business owners, I'm invested in the community, and we've really formed a relationship.
Man, what a fulfilling and rewarding set of experiences. I know it just wasn't a one-off for you when that type of thing happened, but that is really great. Well, Jason, that kind of brings us to an end. Tell the audience how to get in touch with you for commercial banking related with craft brewing.
Perfect. Yeah. So you can find me on LinkedIn. It's under Jason Sleeman. My email is Jason_Sleeman at United Community, it's at UCBI.com, or my phone number is 404-375-3945.
Jason, thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Roy Hickman with Accent Graphics, owner and president of Accent Graphics. Before I ask you to introduce yourself, I'm just going to say something that is interesting, and I know this comes from the show prep that you and I did. You've been in this business for 37 plus years.
Yeah, I've actually been in it a little bit longer than that. I've been an owner for that period of time. Oh. I got started as a senior in high school. I really had no desire to go to college. My father actually couldn't afford to put me through school, and I just figured I needed to find a trade that I might enjoy and whatnot. And I got into printing, and within 3 to 4 years, I was a co-owner in a business, and that didn't work out exactly as like I wanted it to. So I left and started this company 34 years ago.
So, that kind of takes care of the question of tell the audience who you are and what do you do. But I, sorry about stumbling into that, but that's the thing that blows my mind because, you have seen all of, I would say, not the most significant changes in the printing industry over time, but certainly over recent history, you've seen it all.
Well, I have. When I went to work for the family friend that started me in the business, he was a craftsman, and you had to really hone your skill to be able to do what we do. You had to be a chemist every day to deal with all the different whether it was something in the air, something in the water, because printing is basically a chemistry of mixing ink and water to make sure that your product comes out looking great. And now it's almost turnkey. It's almost push button because of the digital age. We still do it the old fashioned way, but we can also do it the newfangled way, as I like to call it.
So what technology are you deploying that's relatively recent?
Well, when digital printing first came out, recent in terms of relative to the printing industry. Printing goes back several hundred years. When the original offset press was invented, it was a letter press. But relative being, 12 years ago or so, when digital first came about, it wasn't great, but it was okay. It was acceptable. People kind of accepted it because they knew they could get it quickly. And we jumped into it with both feet. We knew that was the direction we needed to go. And we've constantly added new digital technology to our capabilities, large format. We also have a machine that prints 5-color, which prints white ink, which is we're one of the few printers in the state of Georgia that has the ability to print white ink on dark stocks.
Do you have a success story that's in your hip pocket that you'd be willing to share?
Yeah, my favorite one is a good friend of mine is a senior vice president of a large supplemental health insurance company. And he called me about 3 years ago, kind of in a panic. And the interesting thing is this company owns their own printing business. And he called me in a little bit of a panic. He said, hey, I need 25,000 12-page brochures printed within a week's time and shipped to over 500 locations. And I told him, send it on, we'll get it done. And he said, on top of that, I've got 68 locations that need these brochures within 48 hours. Oh, so that's where we put our digital equipment to work right away. We were able to jump on it right away. And then the remaining quantity of brochures we were able to throw in our offset equipment. We got it all done, shipped out on time. Everybody got their packages on time. And when it was all said and done with, he sent me a nice email thanking me for a job well done.
And then the last part of the story, I hope, is the client paid you on time.
Yeah, he's a friend of mine, so he took care of me there.
You know where he lives. So
absolutely.
He's definitely paying you one way or another. Well, what is an ideal client for you, Roy?
You know, we typically like somebody that does stuff on a regular basis. So if there's a client out there that does, say, postcard mailings on a regular basis, or churches are really great clients for us because they're doing bulletins every Sunday. They're doing outreach ministries on a continual basis. Companies that still maybe do newsletters or have information that they need to get out. Companies that do regular, monthly or often printing.
And how are you finding your clients?
Well, several ways. I mean, we have a couple salespeople that are out, calling on us. We have a referral network that we're a part of as well, and we're constantly asking our clients for referrals.
And regarding a new client getting either information or pricing for a new job, what's the best way for a new potential client to do that for you?
When we're getting a new job, best thing is to either reach out to us by email or phone call. And now that we're in the digital age, most of it's done over email. They may have a logo or something that they've printed before, and they just need to simply send us a copy of that so that we have it. We have the capability to take a job from start to finish. So we've got the graphic design capability where we can create the piece up front, send them a PDF proof that they have the ability to manipulate and let us know changes that they need to be made to it before we go to press.
So full disclosure to the listening audience, Roy is not only a client of mine at Team Logic IT, but he's also a vendor partner, and I've used Roy and his services many times. And my testimonial that I'd like to give for Roy is this. I don't know, Roy, what have we done? 3 or 4, maybe 5 projects over the last year or so?
Sounds about right.
And none of them are big. I mean, these are just small projects. I think the largest one was maybe $1,000 project. But Roy, you always make me feel like I'm the CEO of UPS or Home Depot or something like that. And that's really meaningful and really appreciated by another, speaking from the point of view of another small businessman. So thank you for that. Thank you for being so diligent and attentive to the needs of small businesses out there.
I appreciate that. That's just been something that was ingrained in me from the time I was a little boy. That's, treat people like you want to be treated. And so growing up and then having the responsibility of my own business, I really appreciate every client that walks in the door, no matter how large or small their job is, because at the end of the day, you never know that guy that walks in the door that only needs 250 business cards. His wife might be the marketing coordinator for some large business, and he might have that same feeling you had and refer her business to me. So you just never really know where it's going to go.
So I gotta talk about the C word, right? COVID. We're at the end of October of 2020. We're 7 or 8 months into the pandemic crisis, and it still seems to be a crisis. Although here in Georgia, we're pretty much wide open. But how has that affected your business? And then what do you see for the recovery with respect to your business?
Well, I'm always hopeful. I'm always very optimistic about, our future. And it has affected our business substantially. There was a time that we were off as much as 50%. I would say on average, we're probably off 15 to 20%. A lot of our clients still have not opened their doors because they have the ability to work virtual. And if clients that consume printing are working virtually, they're not consuming printing. A large part of our client base are churches, private schools, and event planners. And with events being shut down right now for the most part, or being kept very small, and or churches with limited capacity, which means they're probably not doing their outreach ministries and things like that. And to some degree, the private schools just not doing as much printing as they have done in the past has affected us quite a bit. We were able to pivot in some other directions to help us out with that. I'm hoping that maybe by the end of the year or early spring that we'll start to see a definite change and move back to some type of relative normalcy.
Okay, good. That's interesting. Talk to us about, I'm going to go back to technology and technological changes. And, I myself learned an interesting lesson the hard way about using, I guess I'd call it internet printing services. So talk about that type of, or that aspect of your industry, the competitive factors and pressures that it puts on you, and why you're working with Accent Graphics is a differentiator.
That's a great question. The online people, the online printers, so to speak, that advertise pretty heavily, they want you to get used to their software program, and they have a lot of giveaways. For example, they'll do 250 business cards for $10 or whatever. Very, very hard to compete with. But what they want is they want the user to get used to their software platform so that in the future, when they need other things, they'll feel comfortable going back to it. What the majority of my clients have told me over the years is that, number one, they don't get the personal service that they get through the online guy like they get with me. I pick up the phone, I answer, I solve their questions, I hold their hand if I need to, I walk them through the process. And unfortunately, all that costs a little bit more money because it takes the time of somebody or a customer service rep or whatever to do that. Where the online people, you're just essentially dealing with a software program. And when you send in your artwork, if it's not what, up to speed or up to resolution, you're still going to get back whatever you send in. Where if you send us something and we get it on press and we see it looks bad, we're going to pick up the phone and call you and say, there's something wrong with the file that you supplied us. I don't think we should run this. And we'll even offer a digital proof for you to come by and look at so you can confirm what we're seeing. And so, in printing, there was the old saying, get it quickly, get great service, get a great price, pick two of the three. And today that still kind of stands. With the online guy, you might get it cheap, and you may or may not get it quickly, and the product may or may not be very good. But with us, we try to shoot for all three. We're always customer service oriented first and quality oriented second, and then we're going to try our best to get as close as we can to the price you need it to be.
Great. Well, Roy, my favorite question to ask in every interview is, what's a question that you wish people would ask you, but that no one ever does?
That's funny. I thought about that. I thought, hey, Roy, I love printing. Can I buy your business? And that's really not it. But I think for my clients, I would love it if my clients, when we're talking about work that that maybe they've had done elsewhere in the past, if they would ask me a question like, are you willing to, match the current price that I've gotten? And the answer in every case is always yes, as long as it's a current competitive price. Some of these fly-by-nights that you see online, it's hard to compete with those. We have competed with some of the bigger names. And then also, it needs to be a legitimate quote. It can't just be some guy that happens to have a press in his garage and he's just, making a little money on the side. So I wish that clients would give us the opportunity and ask us, hey, would you be willing to meet a former price that I had that, we had done maybe 3 months ago?
So almost 40 years ago, you were a young guy in the breaking into the printing business, and you were thinking about starting your own. And you were thinking about the pluses and the minuses of being a business owner, risking some capital to take a fly at it. But here we are 37 plus years later, and I want you to think back. What over the years has been your most interesting surprise, a pleasant surprise or positive surprise that you didn't really see going into this business?
Well, when I started Accent Graphics 34 years ago, it was 12, 18-hour days. It was nose to the grindstone every day. It was changing clothes to be able to go back and run the equipment, change clothes to put on the sales clothes and go out and call on clients, and everywhere in between. Sometimes I was working 7 days a week, and eventually built the business to where I had 16 or 17 employees. Then as we started to kind of plane out, at this point, we've been in business maybe 10 years or so. I started to realize that I could shape and build this business really just about any way that I wanted to. And I started doing that because one of my loves is coaching kids in football and in baseball. And I was invited. At the time, I had been coaching football for maybe 20 years, maybe 18 years, something like that. And one of our high school coaches asked me to join his staff. And so I wanted to figure out a way that I could shape my business to allow me to go coach high school football. And I was able to make it work out.
So it's really embracing and discovering the entrepreneur's lifestyle that's the big surprise.
Yeah, I'm still married to this business 24/7. It feels like even when I go on vacation, I'm always checking emails, checking in with the office, answering clients, phone calls, doing quotes and stuff like that. But it is nice to be able to control, to some degree, the time that you can get away, whether it's with family or with a hobby, such as coaching ball or whatever.
Great. Well, we're running up against our block of times. Tell the audience how to get in touch with you.
Well, you can reach me. You can look me up on LinkedIn under Roy Hickman. The company name, again, is Accent Graphics. My email is roy@agprintco.com. Our phone number here is 770-455-3366. And we're here Monday through Friday from 8 to 5 p.m.
Roy, thanks.
Appreciate it, Rick. It was fun.
Yeah, it really was. And you did a good job. We really appreciate you. Folks, that's a wrap for the show. IT Help Atlanta is brought to you by Team Logic IT, your managed services advisor. We make technology work for business. For my special guests, Jason Sleeman and Roy Hickman, I'm Rick Higgins with Team Logic IT, and join us next time on IT Help Atlanta.